I will never forget the silence that fell over that courtroom when my husband looked me in the eyes, smiled with disdain, and said loudly, "For the judge, for his attorney, for my attorney, for the legal interns in the back taking notes. She has never worked a single day in her life, Your Honor. I supported this woman for 18 years. She lived off my dime, sleeping in late, watching TV while I worked myself to the bone to pay the bills for this house. And now she wants half. Half of what? Of my sweat." I felt my stomach twist into a knot. Not from fear, not from sadness, but from a rage so cold, so controlled, that my knuckles turned white from gripping the strap of my purse. Beside me, Jessica Miller, my attorney, placed a hand on my arm. I knew what that touch meant. "Stay calm, Helen. It's time." Because, you see, I could have screamed. I could have shot up from that hard, cold chair and thrown in his face the 18 years I'd spent waking up at 5 a.m. to translate technical documents while he snored in the bedroom next door. I could have told everyone in that room how many times I'd stayed up until 3 a.m., finishing contracts in German, in English, in French, the light of the computer screen burning my eyes while he came home smelling of another woman's perfume and complaining that dinner was cold. But I said nothing. I just took a deep breath. I smelled the scent of old paper and stale coffee in that room at the Cook County Courthouse in Chicago. I heard the old air conditioner rattling in the corner. I looked at the judge, a man in his 60s with graying hair and reading glasses, who was jotting something down with a cheap blue ballpoint pen. And then the judge lifted his eyes from the paper, adjusted his glasses, and looked at Robert. My ex-husband was sitting on the other side, in his gray suit and navy blue tie, with that air of someone in complete control. He always had that pose a senior sales manager at a multinational corporation, a successful, respected man, the provider. That was the narrative he'd sold to everyone for nearly 2 decades. "Mr. Anderson," the judge said, his voice weary, like someone who had seen so many lies in his life that he was no longer impressed. "Are you stating, under oath, that your wife never worked during the marriage?" Robert didn't even hesitate. He straightened up in his chair, ran a hand through his gelled hair, and answered with that infuriating conviction. "That's correct, Your Honor. She stayed home. I paid for everything. The mortgage, utilities, the kids' school, groceries, health insurance, all of it. I have the receipts right here if you'd like to see them. Everything in my name, paid from my account." I saw his lawyer, a blonde woman in high heels with an expensive leather briefcase, nod in agreement, as if to say, "That's right, you can trust him." I saw my son, Peter, who was sitting in the back row because he insisted on coming with me even though I told him to stay home, clench his fists. He knew. My children knew. But no one besides me, Jessica, and Brenda, my best friend, knew just how much I had saved. The judge drummed his fingers on the bench, then looked at Jessica Miller. "Counselor, does the defense have anything to say regarding this statement?" Jessica stood up slowly. She was impeccable. A black tailored suit, her hair in a neat bun, with the air of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She placed her briefcase on the table, opened it calmly, and pulled out a flash drive. A small, red, insignificant-looking flash drive that held 18 years of my life. "Your Honor," she said in a firm voice, "my client would like to present documentary evidence that directly contradicts the respondent's statement in its entirety." Robert let out a small laugh. I heard it. It was a low, mocking laugh, as if he were thinking, "What evidence? She has nothing." The judge took the flash drive and plugged it into his computer. The room fell silent, the only sound the clicking of the mouse as folders were opened. And then the judge began to scroll slowly down the screen. His eyes moved down, down, down. I saw the exact moment he understood. He stopped scrolling, went back to the top, opened one folder, then another, then another. He opened a PDF, zoomed in, and read. And then, for the first time since we had entered that room, I saw that 60-year-old man, who had probably seen everything in his career, furrow his brow. He took off his glasses, cleaned them on the tip of his tie, put them back on, looked at the screen again, and then turned to Robert. "Mr. Anderson," the judge said, "and I swear you could have cut the tension in that room with a knife. I am looking here at monthly deposits into a joint account, in your name and Mrs. Helen Anderson's name, averaging $6,200, made by Mrs. Helen Anderson from May 2007 until March 2025. That comes to, let me do the math here, 18 years, 216 months, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.34 million. Sir, are you certain your wife never worked? The silence. My God, the silence. I heard Robert swallow hard. I saw the color drain from his face. His lawyer looked at him with an expression that screamed, "What did you tell me?" And the judge continued, "Because here, Mr. Anderson, I am also seeing, ah, how interesting, a proof of transfer from Mrs. Helen Anderson in the amount of $120,000 for the down payment on a residential property acquired in 2009 on North Clark Street in the Lincoln Park neighborhood of Chicago. This property is the residence where you currently reside, correct?" Robert opened his mouth, closed it, and opened it again. He looked like a fish out of water. Your Honor, that was... And here, the judge continued, now flipping through other digital pages, I see a receipt for $65,000 for a complete renovation of the property in 2012, paid in full by Mrs. Helen Anderson. Mr. Anderson, just so I understand, the house you live in, for which the down payment was paid by your wife, the renovation was paid by your wife, and to which your wife contributed monthly an amount exceeding 80% of the household income for 18 years. You are telling me she didn't work? I felt a chill run up my spine. It wasn't fear. It was something I hadn't felt in a very long time. It was power. It was the feeling that finally someone was seeing, someone was listening, someone was believing. Robert tried to compose himself. He's good at that. He was always good at composing himself, at turning the tables, at making you doubt your own reality. Your Honor, with all due respect, my wife, my ex-wife, she did some freelance work, yes, translations, but that's not a real job. She stayed home, on the computer. She had no schedule, no boss, no real responsibilities. I was the one who... Some freelance work? Jessica interrupted, and I loved the tone of her voice, firm, cutting. Your Honor, I request permission to present supplementary documents. The judge nodded. Jessica placed a folder on the table, a thick, heavy folder, full of paper. She opened it and began pulling out document after document. Contracts signed between Mrs. Helen Anderson and Boeing for the technical translation of engineering manuals, totaling $120,000 over 5 years. Contracts with Ford Motor Company for the simultaneous translation of executive meetings, totaling $90,000 over 3 years. Contracts with the University of Illinois for the academic translation of scientific papers, totaling $52,000 over 6 years. Contracts with... Counselor, the judge said, raising his hand. I understand. You may submit these into evidence. He looked at Robert again, and this time, I saw something different in that judge's eyes. I saw indignation. Mr. Anderson, you came to this hearing under oath, and you lied. Not only did you lie, but you attempted to discredit the dignified work of a highly qualified professional who financially supported this family for nearly 2 decades while you... Let me see here. Yes. While you, according to these statements, which are also here, spent an average of $2,500 a month at restaurants, bars, and hotels that, from what I can see, do not coincide with business trips declared by your company. The bomb had dropped. I didn't know about that part. Jessica hadn't told me. She had investigated, she had dug deep, and she had found it. Robert's lawyer stood up, trying to object, but the judge raised his hand again. I am calling a 5-minute recess for the respondent and his counsel to reevaluate their strategy. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to be very clear. If we continue down this path, it won't just be the division of assets that will weigh against Mr. Anderson. There will be litigation in bad faith, there will be punitive damages for emotional distress, and I may even consider contempt of court, depending on how you conduct yourself from this point forward. Is that understood? Robert was pale, white, sweating. He looked at me. I held his gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stared, firm, serene, because I had waited 18 years for this moment. And now, finally, the truth was on the table. If you want to find out how a woman who was called a freeloader for nearly 2 decades managed to prove, document by document, that she not only worked but supported her entire family while her husband blew their money on mistresses, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, because what happened next, no one could have imagined. Leave a like if you've been through something similar and comment where you're watching from, because this story is just beginning, and revenge was served ice cold. You know that feeling when you watch a movie and see a scene in slow motion? Those 15 minutes of recess were exactly like that. I walked out of that courtroom, down the courthouse hallway, past the people waiting in lines, the lawyers talking in hushed tones, the bored security guards. Every step seemed to echo in my head. Jessica came up behind me, led me to a small, empty room, closed the door, and hugged me. "You did it, Helen," she whispered in my ear. "You did it." And it was only in that moment, away from Robert's eyes, away from the judge, away from everyone, that I let the tears fall. They weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of relief, of liberation, of justice. Finally, but for you to understand how I got there, in that courtroom with a red flash drive full of evidence in my hand, I need to go back in time. I need to tell you how it all began. I met Robert in 2005. I was 23. I had just graduated from the University of Illinois with a degree in linguistics, specializing in translation. I was fluent in English, French, and German. My mother, who had died 2 years earlier from a fast-moving cancer, always used to say, "Helen, study languages. Languages open doors. Languages give you independence." And she was right. When my mother died, she left me a small inheritance, $150,000. To many people, that might seem like a small amount, but to me, at that time, it was everything. It was security. It was a future. I guarded that money like it was gold, investing it in CDs and treasury bonds, slowly making it grow. I met Robert at a corporate event. He was 26, just promoted to a supervisor of sales at a multinational auto parts company. He was handsome, a smooth talker, with the charm of an ambitious man who knew what he wanted. He won me over. I won't lie. He took me to nice restaurants, introduced me to his friends, made me feel special. We dated for a year. He proposed in an Italian restaurant in Lincoln Park, complete with a violinist. I said yes. Of course I did. I was in love. I believed in him. I believed in us. We got married in 2006. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends, in a hall here in Chicago. Honeymoon in Key West, Florida. We came back and rented a small apartment in the Lakeview neighborhood. I was already working as a freelance translator, landing my first contracts with small companies. I subtitled corporate videos, translated emails, simple documents. In the beginning, Robert was proud of me. He'd tell his friends, "My wife is a translator, speaks 4 languages." He thought it was interesting, modern, useful when he needed a quick translation for work. But things started to change when I got pregnant with Laura in 2007. I remember the day I told him. We were having dinner at the small table in our apartment, pasta with Alfredo sauce I had made. He had come home tired from work, complaining about his boss, the traffic, the pressure. I waited for him to eat a little, to breathe, to relax, and then I said, "Robert, I'm pregnant." He stopped with his fork in midair, looked at me, and smiled. It was a genuine smile. I swear. He got up, hugged me, spun me around the room. "I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to be a dad." In that moment, I thought everything would be okay. Laura was born in February 2008, a natural birth, 12 hours of labor. But when I held that little girl in my arms, when I looked at her tiny closed eyes, her perfect face, I knew I had found my purpose. But Robert changed that day too. He started coming home later and later from work. He started complaining about the noise Laura made at night. He started sleeping on the couch because he needed to rest for work the next day. And when I asked for help, when I asked him to watch the baby for just an hour so I could take a decent shower, he would say, "Helen, I work all day. You're home. This is your job." Your job? As if taking care of a newborn wasn't work. As if waking up every 3 hours to breastfeed wasn't exhausting. As if changing diapers, giving baths, soothing cries, organizing doctor's appointments, vaccinations, as if none of that had value. But I didn't argue. I swallowed it. I did it. And more. I kept working because the translation contracts didn't stop. In fact, they increased. Boeing hired me to translate technical manuals for industrial equipment. It was complex work that demanded precision and specific knowledge. I studied technical terminology late at night, with Laura nursing at my breast, the laptop open on the nightstand, my eyes burning with exhaustion. I remember entire nights spent translating turbine specifications while rocking the bassinet with my foot. I remember video calls with European clients at 6 a.m., still in my pajamas with Laura, asleep in my lap, the camera off, pretending I was in a professional office when I was actually in a messy bedroom with baby clothes hanging off a chair. But I always delivered on time, always with high quality. And the money came in, $8,000 one month, $10,000 the next, $12,000, depending on the workload. And where did all that money go? Into the joint account. The one Robert swore was only his. In 2009, Robert was promoted to manager. His salary went up to about $9,000 a month, and that's when he started talking about buying a house. "Helen, we need more space. Laura's growing. We need a yard, security, a good neighborhood." I agreed. Of course, I agreed. I wanted that too. We started looking. We saw several houses, and then we found it, on North Clark Street in Lincoln Park. It was perfect. 3 bedrooms, a backyard, a 2-car garage, a laundry room. The price was $600,000. Robert went to the bank to apply for a mortgage. He came back frustrated. "They're asking for a $120,000 down payment, Helen. I don't have that. We'll have to wait." That's when I said, "I have it." He looked at me with surprise. "You have what?" "I have the money for the down payment, my mother's inheritance. I invested it. It grew. I have $160,000 saved up." I'll never forget his expression. It was a mix of surprise and something else, something I couldn't identify at the time. Today, I know what it was. It was greed. "Then let's buy it," he said. "We'll use your money for the down payment and I'll pay the mortgage installments." And that's what we did. I transferred $120,000 from my account to the title company. We signed the papers. The house was in both our names, under the standard marital property laws, but I was the one who paid the down payment. We moved in March 2009. Laura was 1 year old. I was pregnant again, with Peter. Peter was born in September 2009. Another natural birth, another marathon. But this time, Robert didn't even stay at the hospital all day. He showed up in the morning, stayed for a couple of hours, and said he had to get back to work for an important meeting. I was left alone with 2 children in a big house, working, because the contracts never stopped. Ford hired me to do simultaneous translation for executive meetings. It was well paid, but extremely demanding. I had to be available, sometimes at a moment's notice. And how did I do that with 2 babies at home? I paid for a nanny out of my own pocket, because Robert said that if I chose to work, I had to cover the expenses of my work. So I paid, and I kept depositing into the joint account. Religiously. Every month. $8,000. $9,000, $10,000, depending on what I could invoice. Meanwhile, Robert started traveling more for work, or at least, that's what he said. "I'm going to Detroit to close a deal. I'm heading to New York to meet a client. I have to go to Miami for a presentation. Always trips for 2 or 3 days, always with expenses paid by the company." Or so, he said. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was too busy to be suspicious, too tired to investigate, too exhausted to question, until 2012, when the house started having problems. Leaks, cracks in the foundation, old wiring. We needed an urgent renovation. The estimate came in at $70,000. "I don't have that kind of money right now, Helen," Robert said. "My salary is tied up with the mortgage and the kids' private school. A school that I also paid half of, by the way." "So we don't do the renovation?" I asked. "Don't you have anything saved?" he retorted. I did. Of course I did, because I was always careful. I always saved. From the contracts I worked on, I would set aside 20% and put it in a separate savings account. It was my emergency fund. "I do," I admitted. "Then use your money. When I'm in a better position, I'll pay you back." He never paid me back. I paid $65,000 for the renovation. I had the entire electrical system replaced, the roof redone, the bathrooms remodeled, the whole house painted. The house became beautiful, its value increased, and I was left without my emergency fund. But I kept working, I kept depositing, I kept being invisible, because that's what I was, invisible. I worked 10, 12 hours a day. I'd wake up at 5 a.m. to translate before the kids woke up. I'd stop to make breakfast, take Laura to school, come back, work until noon, make lunch, pick up Laura, help with homework, put Peter down for a nap, go back to the computer, work until 10 p.m. Make dinner, clean the house. And when I finally collapsed into bed, exhausted, Robert would be on his phone, laughing at something, scrolling through his texts. "Who are you talking to?" I'd sometimes ask. "Just people from work," he'd reply without even looking up. I didn't push it. Not because I trusted him, but because I was too tired to fight. The years passed like that. 2013, 2014, 2015. Me, working, depositing, raising the kids, maintaining the house, being a wife, a mother, a professional, being everything. And Robert? Robert went to happy hours, to barbecues with friends, to business dinners that lasted until the early morning, to conferences that always happened to be in cities like Las Vegas or Miami, to training sessions that coincided with long weekends. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how he treated me. "Helen, this house is a mess. What do you do all day?" he'd say. "Helen, the kids are so misbehaved. Don't you set any boundaries for them?" he'd complain. "Helen, you've gained weight. You don't take care of yourself anymore. You never get dressed up," he'd criticize. And I believed him. I'd look in the mirror and see a tired woman with dark circles under her eyes, her hair in a permanent bun because she had no time for the salon, wearing old clothes because she prioritized buying clothes for the children. And I thought he was right, until 2023, when Brenda woke me up. Brenda is my best friend from college. She's an accountant, practical, objective. She came to visit on a Saturday afternoon. The kids were at their paternal grandmother's house. Robert had traveled again to close a deal in Florida. We were having coffee in the kitchen when she asked me, "Helen, tell me something. Do you keep track of the household finances?" "Of course," I answered. "I deposit my earnings into the joint account every month. Robert pays the bills. Do you look at the statements?" I hesitated. "No. Why?" "Because you should," she said. And then she opened her purse and pulled out a folder. "Helen, I pulled the statements for your joint account. You gave me access, remember? When you asked me to organize some receipts for your taxes?" I remembered, and I took a look, out of professional curiosity. And I found some strange things. My heart started pounding. "What kind of things?" She opened the folder and started showing me. Charges from motels, hotels, expensive restaurants, jewelry stores, online purchases from gift websites. "Helen, in the last 5 years, Robert has spent over $150,000 on things that have nothing to do with the house, the kids, or you two. This is from another life, a life you're not seeing." I felt the floor drop out from under me, and on that day, in that kitchen, with Brenda holding my hand, I understood. I wasn't invisible. I was being deliberately erased. I wasn't incapable. I was being deliberately diminished. I wasn't being supported. I was the one doing the supporting while being robbed blind. And on that day, I decided. "Enough," I said, wiping my tears. "Help me, Brenda. Help me gather everything. Every statement, every deposit slip, every receipt, everything. I want it all documented." And Brenda smiled. The smile of someone who knows the war has just begun. I already started, my friend. I already started. For the next 6 months, I transformed. Not on the outside. On the outside, I was the same old Helen. I woke up early, made breakfast, took the kids to school, worked, cleaned the house, made dinner. But on the inside, I was a woman on a mission. Brenda taught me the first rule. Document everything without leaving a trace. We would meet once a week at a coffee shop downtown, far from my neighborhood, far from anywhere Robert might show up. She'd bring her laptop, I'd bring flash drives, folders, notes, and we pieced together the puzzle. She managed to get complete access to the joint account statements for the last 10 years. Every deposit from me, every withdrawal from him, every payment, every transfer. We started categorizing everything in a massive spreadsheet. I'll never forget the day she showed me the final result. "Helen," she said, turning her laptop toward me, "in 18 years of marriage, you deposited $1.34 million into this account. Robert deposited $940,000. You contributed almost double what he did. And you know what's crazy? In the last 5 years, he has withdrawn $210,000 in cash. $210,000. No justification, no invoices, no receipts. I felt the bile rise in my throat. Where did that money go? I have a theory, Brenda said, opening another tab. Look here. Hotel charges. Always on the same weekends. Charges on his personal credit card, not linked to the joint account. At expensive restaurants. Always for 2 people. Purchases at jewelers, lingerie stores, imported perfumes. Helen, he has another life. And he's financing it with the money you deposit. I wanted to scream, to cry, to slam my fist on the table. But I did none of that. I just took a deep breath and asked, "What do I do now?" You find a lawyer, a good one, and you file for divorce before he does. Because a man who cheats, lies, and hides money will eventually want to get rid of his wife to be with his mistress. And when that happens, he will try to leave you with nothing. You need to get ahead of him. That's how I met Jessica Miller. Esquire Brenda gave me her contact information. She specializes in contentious divorce and asset division. She's expensive, but she's worth every penny. Trust me. I called the next day and scheduled a consultation. I went alone. On a day Robert was traveling and the kids were at school. Jessica's office was in a high-rise in the Loop, 12th floor, a spacious room with a huge glass desk and a bookshelf filled with legal volumes. She was 38, with straight, shoulder-length black hair, sharp brown eyes, and the posture of someone who had seen it all and was impressed by nothing. "Sit down, Helen," she said, pointing to the leather chair in front of her desk. "Tell me everything. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Don't hide anything. Don't spare any details. I need to know exactly what we're dealing with." And I told her about the 18 years of marriage, the monthly deposits, the down payment on the house, the renovation, the invisible work, his trips, my suspicions, the bank statements Brenda had found. I told her everything. Jessica took notes. When I finished, she placed her pen on the desk, folded her hands, and looked me in the eye. "Helen, you have an incredibly strong case. Not just for the division of assets, but for punitive damages. What he did is called misappropriation of marital funds and defamation. You worked, you contributed, you supported the family, and he erased you, made you invisible, and on top of that, diverted marital assets. This is serious. What do I need to do?" I asked, my voice firm, firmer than I thought it could be. "First, we need everything documented. Statements, receipts, work contracts, tax returns, everything. Second, we need witnesses. Someone who can confirm you always worked, that you always contributed. Third, we need to investigate him, because if he's spending that much money with no justification, he's hiding something, and we're going to find out what. Will you help me?" I asked, and I think there was a note of pleading in my voice. Jessica smiled. It was a small smile, but it was loaded with meaning. "Helen, I'm not going to help you. I'm going to represent you. And when I'm done, Robert will understand that he messed with the wrong woman." For the next 3 months, it was war. A silent war, but war nonetheless. Jessica hired a private investigator, a quiet, efficient man in his 50s. He followed Robert for a full month. He took pictures, recorded video, documented everything, and he found her. Robert had a mistress, a 32-year-old marketing analyst named Tiffany, living in a rented apartment in the Lakeview neighborhood. And guess who was paying the rent on that apartment? Guess who paid for her gym membership? Guess who bought a brand new compact car in her name? That's right, Robert, with money from the joint account, with my money. When Jessica showed me the photos, I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't pain, it wasn't anger. It was almost relief. Because now I was sure. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right all along. He's been with her for 3 years, Jessica said, showing me the timeline the investigator had put together. Met her at a trade show in Chicago. It started as an affair, turned into a parallel relationship. He spends the weekends you think he's on business trips with her. He takes her to restaurants, hotels, on vacations, and he's paying for all of it, with money that should belong to the family. I want a divorce, I said, and my voice didn't tremble at all. I want a divorce, and I want everything that is mine by right. You'll get it, Jessica promised, but we're going to do this the right way. We're not going to confront him now. We're going to gather all the evidence, organize everything, and when we have an airtight case, then we'll file the petition. He won't even know what hit him, and that's exactly what we did. While I continued to live that life of appearances, going home, making dinner, sleeping next to him, pretending everything was fine, Jessica was building a complete dossier: bank statements, payment receipts, work contracts, tax returns, photos, videos, text messages. The investigator managed to recover. Then one day, in October 2024, I decided, that's it. I can't pretend anymore. It was a Sunday. Robert was watching football in the living room. The kids were in their rooms. I walked in, turned off the TV, and said, "We need to talk." He looked at me, irritated. "Helen, I'm watching the game. I want a divorce." Silence. He blinked, processed it, and then he laughed. A mocking, cruel laugh. "You want a divorce? You, Helen? For God's sake, what are you going to do with your life without me? You don't work. You have no money. You have nothing. You're a housewife. You depend on me." And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. It was like one door closed and another opened. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel hurt. I felt pity. Pity for a man so arrogant he couldn't even see his own downfall. "Okay, Robert," I said calmly. "You'll be served with the divorce papers. We'll see each other in court." I left the room, went to my bedroom, picked up my phone, and texted Jessica. "You can file it now." The bomb exploded a week later. Robert was served with the court summons at home. I was working in the makeshift office I had set up in the guest room when I heard him scream, "Helen! Helen, get down here now!" I went downstairs slowly. He was in the living room with the papers in his hand, his face red with rage. "What is this?" he yelled. "A petition for divorce with claims for division of assets, punitive damages, and misappropriation of funds? Have you lost your mind?" "No," I answered calmly. "I woke up. You won't get a thing, Helen. Nothing. This house is mine. I paid for it. I supported you for 18 years. You don't work. You have no right to anything." "We'll see," I said, and went back upstairs. He kept yelling for about 10 minutes, then slammed the door and left. He didn't come back until late that night, drunk, and slept on the couch. From then on, it was open war. He hired a lawyer, a woman I later learned was known for her aggressive, intimidating tactics. She tried calling me. I didn't answer. She tried to schedule settlement meetings. I refused. Everything went through Jessica. Robert started trying to empty the joint account, transferring everything he could into an account solely in his name. But Jessica had anticipated that. She got a temporary restraining order, freezing any transaction over $5,000 without court approval. He was furious. He started threatening me. "You're going to regret this, Helen. I will leave you destitute. I will prove you're a lazy bum who never worked a day in her life. I will destroy you." But I wasn't afraid anymore, because I had something he didn't: the truth and evidence. Lots of evidence. The settlement conference was scheduled for January 2025. We went, me, Jessica, Robert, and his lawyer. It was in a small room at the courthouse. The mediator tried to get us to reach an agreement. Robert offered me 20% of the value of the house. 20%. I refused. He raised it to 30. I refused again. "Your Honor," Jessica said to the mediator, "my client will not accept less than 60% of the total marital estate, plus $200,000 in punitive damages, plus compensatory alimony of $5,000 a month for 5 years. Robert's lawyer nearly choked. "That's absurd. My client supported this woman for 18 years. "Supported her?" Jessica said with a sharp smile. "Your Honor, we request that this matter be set for a trial. We will prove, document by document, who supported whom. And that's when the judge scheduled the hearing. The hearing that happened 3 weeks later. The one you already saw. The one that changed everything. But there's one thing I haven't told you yet. Something that happened the week before the hearing. Robert tried to buy me back. He showed up at the house on a Friday night and rang the doorbell. I opened it. He was holding flowers, red roses. My heart didn't even speed up. I just looked at him and thought, too late. Helen, he said, his voice almost soft. We need to stop this. We have 18 years together. We have children. We have a history. Let's start over. I admit I was wrong. I was very wrong. But I still love you. We can fix this. I took the flowers, looked at them, and then I spoke in the calmest, firmest voice I had ever had. Robert, you never loved me. You used me. You erased me. You diminished me. You spent the money I earned with my own sweat to pay for your mistress while I raised your children and maintained your home. And now that you're cornered, now that you know you're going to lose everything, you show up with flowers and pretty words? No, I don't accept it. I don't want it anymore. I wish you good luck in court. You're going to need it. And I closed the door in his face. That night, I slept better than I had in years. When we returned to the courtroom after that 5-minute recess, the atmosphere had completely changed. Robert walked in with his head down, his tie loosened, sweating. His lawyer had the tense expression of someone who knows they've lost control of the situation. I walked in calmly, my head held high, with Jessica by my side. The judge was already seated. He looked at us over his glasses and said, "Let's proceed. Mr. Anderson, have you and your counsel had time to reevaluate your position?" His lawyer stood up, smoothed her blazer, and tried to regain control. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges that there was a misunderstanding regarding the claimant's financial contribution. However, we still maintain that the division of assets should follow the legal criteria for community property, 50/50, and that—" "Counselor," the judge interrupted, his tone devoid of patience. "I'm going to be direct. I spent the last 15 minutes reviewing the documents presented by the claimant's defense, and I have a few questions for your client. Questions that, depending on the answers, could constitute not just bad faith litigation, but more serious crimes. Are you aware of this, Mr. Anderson?" Robert swallowed hard and nodded. "Good. First question. At any point in the last 18 years, did you declare Mrs. Helen Anderson as your dependent on your federal income tax returns?" Silence. "Mr. Anderson, I asked you a question." "Yes, Your Honor," Robert mumbled. "I did. You claimed her as a dependent, as someone with no income of her own, correct?" "Yes, but Mrs. Anderson had her own income. She had an LLC, issued invoices, paid taxes. It's all documented here. So, you knowingly filed a false declaration with the IRS. Are you aware that this could constitute tax fraud and perjury?" Robert's face went white. His lawyer tried to intervene, but the judge held up his hand. "I'm not finished." Second question. According to these bank statements, you made cash withdrawals over the last 5 years totaling $210,000. Can you explain what that money was for? Robert opened his mouth, closed it, and looked at his lawyer. She put a hand on his arm, but he was clearly panicking. "They were personal expenses, Your Honor. Personal expenses," the judge repeated. $210,000 in cash, with no receipts, no invoices. "Mr. Anderson, are you aware that this constitutes suspicious financial activity and that I can, at this moment, request the IRS to open a full investigation into your financial affairs?" "Your Honor," his lawyer tried, "that is outside the scope of this divorce hearing." "No, it is not, Counselor," the judge cut in, "because the division of assets depends on the correct identification of the marital estate. And if there are indications that the respondent has diverted marital funds, that directly affects the division. So, Mr. Anderson, I will ask again. Where did that money go?" And that's when Jessica stood up. "Your Honor, if I may, perhaps I can help clarify." The judge gestured for her to proceed. Jessica opened her folder and took out an envelope. Inside were photos. She placed them on the table, one by one, so everyone could see. They were photos of Robert with his mistress, at a restaurant, at a hotel, entering her apartment, kissing her in a mall parking garage, and the last photo. The last photo was a copy of a rent check for $2,500 a month in the name of Tiffany Hayes, paid from Robert's personal bank account. Your Honor, Jessica said with deadly calm, my client's husband diverted funds from the joint account to maintain an extramarital affair for at least 3 years. He paid for his mistress's apartment rent, her gym membership, restaurants, hotels, vacations, all with money that should have been for his family, and most egregiously, he did this while accusing my client of being a freeloader who contributed nothing. The silence that fell over the room was so thick I could hear my own heart beating. I looked at Robert. He was destroyed. Not physically, but emotionally and psychologically. He was shattered. All the arrogance was gone. The confident pose had melted away. He was just a pathetic man, exposed and humiliated. And you know what I felt? Nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not pity, just a void, as if I had finally closed the door to a room in my life, and now that room no longer existed. The judge took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes, put them back on, and then looked at Robert with an expression that was a mixture of disgust and exhaustion. Mr. Anderson, in 35 years on the bench, I have seen a lot of things. But what you have done here today, you came into a divorce hearing under oath and lied shamelessly. You slandered your wife. You attempted to appropriate assets that she helped build. You diverted marital funds to maintain a mistress. This isn't just bad faith. This is cruelty. He turned to Robert's lawyer. Counselor, I am going to give your client one more chance. A single chance. Either he accepts a fair settlement offer that recognizes Mrs. Anderson's contribution, or I will rule on this case based on what I have seen here today. And I assure you, the judgment will not be favorable to your client. Quite the opposite. In addition to a disproportionate division of assets, I will award significant punitive damages, and I will also forward copies of this proceeding to the IRS and the district attorney's office. Is that clear? The lawyer swallowed hard, looked at Robert, and whispered something in his ear. He nodded, defeated. Your Honor, she said. May we have a few minutes to speak with the opposing party? 5 minutes, the judge said. Use them well. I walked out of the room with Jessica. We went back to that hallway, to that small, empty room. She closed the door and looked at me with a smile. You did it, Helen. He's broken. Now we just need to close the deal on our terms. 2 minutes later, Robert's lawyer knocked on the door. She came in, looking exhausted. My client is willing to reach an agreement, she said. He will agree to a 60/40 split of the assets in Mrs. Anderson's favor. He will pay $100,000 in damages and compensatory alimony of $3,000 a month for 3 years. Jessica looked at me. I knew she was asking me without words. Is it enough? I thought about it. I thought about the 18 years, the late nights working, the stolen money, the humiliation, the lies. And then I said, no. The lawyer blinked. What do you mean, no? 60% of the assets, $200,000 in damages, $5,000 a month in alimony for 5 years. And he signs a public statement, acknowledging that I always worked, that I contributed financially to the family, and that his allegations in this hearing were false and slanderous. That is non-negotiable. The lawyer hesitated. I'll have to consult my client. Consult, Jessica said. But you have 3 minutes. After that, we go back in there and let the judge decide. And I guarantee it will be much worse for him. The lawyer left and came back 2 minutes later. He agrees. And that was it. In that moment, in that cold, windowless room in the Chicago courthouse, I won. Not just the case, I won my dignity back. We returned to the courtroom. The judge heard the terms of the agreement, had it all entered into the record, and then he looked at me and said, Mrs. Anderson, I want you to know that cases like yours are far more common than they should be. Women who work, who contribute, who support their families, and who are erased and made invisible. I hope this judgment serves as a reminder that justice may be slow, but it arrives. I wish you the best of luck in your new life. I smiled and thanked him, and I walked out of that courtroom with my head held high. But the story didn't end there. As I was leaving the courthouse, walking down those old marble steps, Robert came after me. He caught up to me in the parking garage, Helen, wait! I stopped. I turned and looked at him. He looked broken. His eyes were red, his hands were shaking, his voice was choked with emotion. I'm so sorry. For everything. I was an idiot, a coward. I treated you horribly. I underestimated you. I still love you, Helen. Can't we try again? Start over? I'll break up with Tiffany. I'll change. I promise I'll change. And you know what I felt, hearing that? Pity. A deep pity. Because he truly believed he could fix 18 years of emotional and financial abuse with a desperate apology in a parking garage. I took a deep breath and then I said, with all the calm in the world, Robert, you don't love me. You never loved me. You loved the idea of having a woman who would serve you, support you, who was invisible enough that you could do whatever you wanted without consequences. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. I am not her, and I don't want to be. So no, we are not going to try again. We are not going to start over. We are truly finished. And I hope you find peace, far away from me. I turned my back and walked away. And when I got into my car, when I closed the door and gripped the steering wheel, I finally let the tears fall. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. I was free. Dear listeners who have accompanied me until the end of my story, how did you find today's tale? I'm curious about the impression it has left in your hearts and the thoughts it has sparked in you. Please feel free to share your impressions and opinions in the comments. I will carefully read each of them. The likes and subscriptions you give me are the greatest source of strength and motivation for creating better stories in the future. Please don't forget to do so. I sincerely wish that your life is always filled with happiness and good fortune, and that the warm light in your hearts never fades.